Hello, this video is a continuation of part 1. Check the playlist if you haven't watched part 1 yet. Now, enough talk. Let's get into the story. December arrived wearing frost and secrets. Richard stood in the community center's art room, watching Emma paint clouds with watercolors, her return bracelet catching the light with every brushstroke. 2 weeks had passed since her illness, and while her body had recovered as Dr. Crawford predicted, something deeper had shifted. Mr. Richard, Emma didn't look up from her painting. "Do you think Mama can see me from heaven?" "I'm certain of it," he said, moving closer to examine her work. The clouds she painted weren't white, they were silver, like her bracelet, with hints of gold at the edges. "Good, because I need to tell her something, and I want to make sure she hears it." Emma set down her brush and turned to face him. "I'm going to tell you a secret, a really big one." Richard's chest tightened. "You can tell me anything." Emma glanced around to ensure they were alone, then whispered, "The night I got sick, I wasn't really asleep when you and Aunt Linda were talking. I heard everything. Everything about how you own the building company, about how you arranged everything, the job, the apartment, the debts disappearing." She studied his face. "You're not just rich, are you? You're like really, really rich. Millionaire rich." Richard sat heavily on a child-sized chair that creaked under his weight. "Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to know me first. Not my money, just me, Richard, your bench friend, your grandpa." Emma considered this with her characteristic gravity. "That's why you were so sad that first day. Not just because Margaret died, but because when you have that much money, you can't tell who loves you for you." The insight from the 7-year-old took his breath away. "That's exactly right. But I loved you before I knew about the money," Emma said simply. "I loved you for drinking hot chocolate and crying at clouds and being scared in the hospital with me. The money doesn't change that. No. But it does change something else." Emma picked up her brush again, adding another silver cloud to her painting. "I want to help." "Help with what?" "Other kids. Kids like the ones in Hearts Together. Kids whose mamas and daddies are sick or gone. Kids who have to sell their special things." She turned to him, eyes blazing with determination. "We have money now. We should use it." Richard felt Margaret's presence so strongly he almost turned to look for her. This was exactly what she would have said, what she had said countless times. "What did you have in mind?" Emma pulled out a notebook when she started carrying. A notebook filled with careful handwriting and enthusiastic drawings. "I call it the Bracelet Project," she announced. "See, when kids have to sell something special to help their families, we buy it back. But not just give it back, that's charity, and Aunt Linda says charity can hurt people's dignity. Instead, we help them earn it back." She flipped through pages of detailed plans, children's drawings of treasured items, watches, necklaces, toys, books. Next to each, Emma had written ideas. Sarah's dad's guitar. She could play at community center. Marcus's grandfather's medals. He could teach about history. "You've been planning this," Richard said, amazed. "For 2 weeks. Since I got better. Since I got my bracelet back. Because I was lucky I found you. But what about all the kids who don't find someone?" Her voice dropped. "What about the kids who have to choose between keeping memories and buying medicine?" Richard pulled her into his lap, notebook and all. "You remarkable girl. You beautiful, brilliant, remarkable girl. So we can do it. The Bracelet Project. We can do anything you want. But Emma, this is a big responsibility. Using wealth to help people, it's harder than it sounds. You have to be careful, thoughtful, like you were with us." Emma interrupted. "Secret helping, dignity helping, love helping." "Exactly." Emma bounced with excitement. "Can we start today? Carmen at the pawn shop would help. He probably knows all the kids who've had to sell special things." Before Richard could respond, Linda appeared in the doorway. "There you are, Emma. Time for your checkup with Dr. Martinez." "But we're planning," Emma protested. "Planning? What?" Linda asked, then noticed the notebook. "Emma-chan, what are you scheming now?" Emma looked at Richard, who nodded. "Tell her." As Emma excitedly explained the Bracelet Project, Richard watched Linda's expression shift from skepticism to wonder to something that looked like pride mixed with worry. "Baby, that's a beautiful idea. But no buts," Emma said firmly. "Mister Richard says we can do it, right?" "Grandpa," the words still sent warmth through Richard's chest. "Right? But we'll start small. Test the idea. Make sure we're helping, not creating dependence." Linda sat down beside them, studying her niece. You've been thinking about this since you got sick, haven't you? Emma nodded. When I had the fever, I kept dreaming about all the kids whose mamas were sick like mine, about all the special things they might lose, and I thought, what if they didn't have to? Oh, sweetheart. Linda pulled Emma close. Your mama would be so proud. I know, Emma said matter-of-factly. She told me so in the dream. Well, not with words, but with feelings. That evening, after Emma's check-up perfect health, Dr. Martinez declared Richard found himself in Carmen's pawn shop with both Chen women. Carmen listened to Emma's explanation with increasing interest. I've got a whole back room of items like that, he admitted. Things I couldn't bear to put out for sale. Kids' stuff especially. Been hoping the families would come back. For them. Show me, Emma demanded. The back room was a museum of small tragedies. A child's violin with practice makes perfect. Mom engraved on the case. A christening gown yellowed with age. A signed baseball. To my MVP, love Dad. Photo albums. Military medals, each item carefully tagged with dates and names. Emma moved through the room like a tiny detective, notebook out, recording everything. This is going to take a lot of work, she said seriously, and a lot of money. I have a lot of money, Richard reminded her. Not just your money, Emma said. That's not how it works. We need community money, volunteer money, earn money. Like how Mama always said love multiplies when shared. Carmen scratched his chin. The kid's got a point. Handouts create resentment. Hand-ups create community. So how do we do it? Linda asked, clearly caught up in Emma's vision despite herself. Emma opened to a new page in her notebook. First, we identify the kids and families. Then we figure out what skills or talents they have. Then we create ways for them to use those talents to earn back their treasures. Like a marketplace, Richard said, understanding dawning, a barter. System based on contribution rather than currency. Exactly, Emma beamed. Carmen, would you help? You know all the families. On one condition, Carmen said, this stays anonymous. Families don't know where the opportunity comes from. They just get offered chances to earn what they need. Secret helping, Emma agreed, the best kind. As they planned, Richard marveled at the sophistication of Emma's thinking. She assigned roles: Carmen as identifier of needs, Linda as medical consultant for families in crisis, Richard as silent financial backer, and herself as chief magic officer, which apparently meant the person who made sure love stayed at the center of every transaction. We'll need a base of operations, Linda pointed out, somewhere families feel comfortable coming. The community center, Emma said immediately. Maria likes me. She'll help. By the time they left Carmen's shop, the bracelet project had a framework, a mission, and its first case a 10-year-old named Miguel whose father's watch was sitting in Carmen's safe. His dad died in construction accident last year, Carmen explained. Mom sold the watch to pay for funeral. Kid comes by every week to look at it through the glass. Emma's jaw set in determination. Richard was beginning to recognize. We'll get it back for him. What can he do? Kid's brilliant with computers. Fixes them for neighbors. Self-taught. Perfect, Emma declared. The community center needs tech help. He can earn his dad's watch by being their computer helper in the car ride home. Linda kept glancing at Emma in the rearview mirror. Baby, this is wonderful, but it's also a lot of responsibility. Are you sure? Mama always said our job was to multiply love, Emma interrupted. That's exactly what she said, Emma. Our job is to multiply love. This is me doing my job. Out of the mouths of babes, Richard murmured. I'm not a baby, Emma protested. I'm a chief magic officer. That night, Richard sat in his penthouse office, video conferencing with his legal team. I need a foundation established. The Bracelet Foundation. Mission, reuniting families with soul treasures through community contribution and earned assistance. Budget, Thomas asked. Whatever it takes. But structure it so that every dollar of my money is matched by community involvement volunteer. Hours, donated skills, bartered services. This isn't charity, it's community building. After the call, Richard stood at his window, looking out at the city lights. Each light represented a family, and how many of them had sold precious items just to survive. How many children went to bed missing their father's watch, their mother's ring, their grandmother's Bible. His phone buzzed, a text from Emma, who was supposed to be asleep. Grandpa, I can't sleep, too excited. Do you think we can really help them all? He typed back, not all, but more than yesterday, and tomorrow. More than today. That's math, right? Love multiplication, the very best kind. Good. Night, Grandpa. Love you. Love you too. Sweetheart. A second text from Daniel. Dad. Linda told me about Emma's project. It's incredible. Can I help? Maybe. With the tech side. Since I work in IT, Richard smiled, typing, Emma would love that. Fair warning, she takes her chief magic officer duties very seriously. Can't wait to take orders from an 8-year-old. 7. She won't be 8 until next month. Even better. See you next weekend. Looking forward to it. Richard remained at the window, seeing not just city lights now, but possibility. Emma had taken her own loss and transformed it into vision for healing others. At 7 years old, she understood what had taken him 72 years to learn, that the only way to heal your own heart was to help heal others. The bracelet project would work because Emma would make it work, because she had the one thing money couldn't buy: absolute faith that love, properly applied, could fix almost anything. And maybe, Richard thought as he finally headed to bed, maybe she was right. Tomorrow would bring their first official case. Miguel would get his father's watch back, earned through his own skills. And from there, the project would grow, shaped by Emma's vision and protected by the adults who loved her. It was exactly what Amy would have wanted, her daughter taking pain and transforming it into purpose. Exactly what Margaret would have understood, that wealth meant nothing unless it was used to multiply love. Exactly what the universe had been planning all along, when it whispered to a little girl to share her cake with a lonely old man on a bench. The first bracelet project success came 2 weeks before Christmas. Richard watched from the corner of the community center as Miguel, age 10, presented his completed work to Maria Gonzalez. The center's entire computer system cleaned, updated, and running faster than it had in years. Extraordinary work, Miguel, Maria said, genuinely impressed. You've saved us thousands of dollars. I wish we could pay you what you're worth. Miguel shuffled his feet, uncomfortable with praise. It's okay. I like fixing things. Well, Maria continued, following the script Emma had carefully orchestrated, we can't pay much, but I did find something at a local shop that I thought you might like, a thank you gift. She produced a small box. Miguel's hand shook as he opened it, revealing his father's watch, the one his mother had sold 8 months ago to pay for the funeral. How did you? Miguel's voice broke. He looked around wildly, as if expecting his father to walk through the door. This is Papa's watch. But Mama sold it. She cried for days. Sometimes, Maria said gently, when we do good work, the universe pays attention. Consider it a Christmas bonus. Miguel clutched the watch to his chest and sobbed. Emma, watching from behind a bookshelf, had tears streaming down her face. Richard moved to her side. You did that, he whispered. You made that possible. We did it, Emma corrected. All of us together. Linda appeared beside them, having taken a break from her new job to witness the moment. There's 3 families this week, she said quietly. Word is spreading. Carmen says more people are coming to him, asking about opportunities. It was true. The bracelet project had taken on a life of its own. What started as Emma's notebook sketches had become a carefully orchestrated network. Families in need were identified, their soul treasures located, and opportunities created for them to earn them back through community service. We need to be careful, Richard warned. Too much too fast and people will get suspicious. Let them, Emma said fiercely. Maybe it's time people knew that miracles are just humans helping humans. But the universe, Richard was learning, had its own timeline for revelations. The next day, a reporter from the Times showed up at the community center. Sarah Williams, an investigative journalist known for exposing charity fraud. I'm doing a story on unusual patterns of donation in Washington Heights, she told Maria. While Richard listened from the hallway, several families have reported remarkable reversals of fortune, debts forgiven, jobs appearing, lost items mysteriously returned. All connected to this center. Maria, bless her, played dumb beautifully. We've been fortunate with grants lately. Times are generous, people want to help. But Sarah wasn't buying it. These aren't normal patterns. This is coordinated, systematic. Someone with significant resources is playing fairy godmother. She paused, and I think I know who. Richard stepped into view. Ms. Williams, I heard you were asking questions. Sarah's eyes sharpened. Richard Thornton, I should have known. Billionaire suddenly develops a heart, starts throwing money at the poor. Stop. Emma's voice cut through the cynicism like a blade. She stood in the doorway, small and fierce, wearing her return bracelet like armor. You don't get to talk about him like that, Emma, Linda started, but Emma was already moving, planting herself between Richard and the reporter. Mr. Richard isn't throwing money. He's multiplying love. There's a difference. Sarah studied the child with professional interest, and you are Emma Chen. I'm the one who started this whole thing with a chocolate cake and $20 worth of hope, Emma. No, Richard said quietly, but she shook her head. No more secrets. Mama always said truth was braver than tricks. She said, Emma, truth is braver than tricks. Choose truth. She faced the reporter squarely. You want a story? I'll give you a story. About a little girl who sold her dead mother's bracelet to buy cocoa. About a sad billionaire on a bench who needed birthday cake more than money. About how helping one person can ripple out to help hundreds. Sarah's expression shifted. You're the girl, the one who started the bracelet project. Yes. Emma pulled out her notebook, now worn and expanded with rubber bands. Look, every family we've helped, every treasure returned, every hour volunteered, every skill shared. This isn't charity, it's community. The reporter accepted the notebook, flipping through pages of careful documentation, photos of return items, thank you letters, children's drawings, a complex web of connection and care, all radiating from one small girl's act of kindness. This is. Sarah paused, visibly moved. This is extraordinary. No, Emma said simply, it's ordinary. That's the point. Ordinary people doing ordinary, kind things. Mr. Richard just made it bigger, but anyone could do it. Everyone should do it. Why anonymously? Sarah asked. Why all the secrecy? Linda stepped forward, placing protective hands on Emma's shoulders. Because dignity matters. Because no one wants to be a charity case. Because sometimes the best help is the kind that lets people believe they earned their miracles. But now you're revealing it. Emma looked up at Richard. Because keeping it secret is starting to hurt more than help. People are getting suspicious. Families are feeling guilty. It's time to show them that there's no magic here, just love organized properly. Richard knelt beside her. Are you sure? Once the story comes out, everything changes. The program, our privacy, your normal life. My life hasn't been normal since Mama died, Emma said matter-of-factly, but maybe that's okay. Maybe normal is overrated. Maybe what matters is useful. Sarah had been recording the entire exchange. Mr. Thornton, do you want to comment? Richard stood. Decision made. Yes, the bracelet project is real. It's funded primarily by my resources, but run entirely by community volunteers. Its mission is simple: reunite families with treasured items they were forced to sell during crisis, using a model of earned assistance rather than charity. And this all started because a 7-year-old girl showed me that the proper response to grief is generosity, that love multiplies when shared. That $20 worth of cocoa can be worth more than $20 million in the right hands. Sarah lowered her recorder. I came here looking for a scandal. Rich man playing puppet master with poor families. Did you find one? Emma asked innocently. No, I found something else, something better. Sarah smiled. How would you feel about telling this story properly? Not as an expose, but as an example. Other cities could replicate this model. Other communities could multiply the love. Emma finished. Yes, make it everywhere. Every city should have a bracelet project. Richard caught Linda's eye, saw her mixture of pride and concern. Their quiet life was about to become very public, but Emma was right, the secret had grown. Too big to keep. There are conditions, Richard said. Emma's safety and privacy must be protected. The families we've helped remain anonymous unless they choose otherwise. And the focus stays on the community model, not on my involvement. Agreed, Sarah said. But Emma, people will want to hear from you, the girl who started it all. Emma straightened, looking far older than her 7 years. Good. I'd have things to say about how losing someone doesn't mean losing hope. About how selling precious things sometimes leads to finding more precious things. About how every kid who's had to be brave to young deserves someone paying attention. When can we start? Sarah asked. After Christmas, Linda said firmly. Emma's still recovering from being sick, and we have family celebrations planned. Family. Sarah's journalist instincts perked up. I'm adopted, Emma announced proudly. Mr. Richard is my grandpa officially now. We have papers and everything, and Daniel is like my uncle. He visits from Boston and helps with computer stuff. The story that ran Christmas Eve was nothing like what Sarah Williams usually wrote. Instead of exposing greed or fraud, She told the tale of grace found in unlikely places. The headline read, "The $20 Miracle, How One Child's Sacrifice Launched a Movement." The article included a photo not of Richard's wealth or the community center's programs, but of Emma's notebook, page after page of careful plans to help others, all stemming from a single October day when she chose to sell her mother's bracelet. But the most powerful part was Emma's quote at the end. "My mama used to say that love is the only thing that grows when you give it away. She was right. I gave away her bracelet, but I got back a grandfather, a stronger Aunt Linda, an Uncle Daniel who teaches me coding, and a whole community of people who believe in multiplying love. That's not loss, that's investment." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Donations poured in, not just money, but offers of time, skills, and partnership. Other cities inquired about starting their own bracelet projects. Families came forward with stories of items sold and dreams of reunion. But for Richard, sitting in Linda and Emma's apartment on Christmas morning, none of that mattered as much as the simple joy of watching Emma open presents. She'd insisted on a small celebration. Mama said the best presents are presents, not presents, but he and Linda and Daniel had managed a few surprises. "This one's special," Richard said, handing her a small wrapped box. "Not for me, for Margaret, Emma's." Eyes widened. "Your wife? But how?" "Open it." Inside was a silver locket, delicate and old. Emma opened it to find a photos Amy on one side, Margaret on the other. "Margaret always said this locket was waiting for the right granddaughter," Richard explained, his voice thick. "She'd have been so proud to see you wear it." Emma studied the two women who shaped the people she loved most. "They look like they'd be friends." "I think they are," Linda said softly, "somewhere." Emma fastened the locket around her neck, where it rested beside her returned bracelet. "Now I carry all my family with me." "All?" Richard asked. Emma grinned. "Well, you and Aunt Linda and Daniel are the big defitted jewelry, but you're here, in person, which is better." Daniel, who'd arrived the night before, pulled out his phone. "Speaking of family, I've been working on something, a website for the bracelet project." "Want to see?" Emma bounced with excitement as Daniel showed her. The design simple, elegant, with her hand-drawn logo of a tree with silver branches at the center. "It's perfect," she declared. "When can we launch it?" "Whenever the chief magic officer says." Daniel replied, grinning as snow began to fall outside. Richard thought about the article, about the changes coming, about the thousands of Emmas out there who might be helped by what they'd built. But mostly, he thought about grace, how it entered through the cracks loss created, how it multiplied when shared, how it looked like a 7-year-old girl wearing the pieces of silver and the wisdom of ages. "Merry Christmas, Grandpa," Emma said, curling up beside him on the couch. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." And it was, miraculously, impossibly, perfectly it was. The bracelet project would grow. Other cities would adopt the model. Thousands of families would be reunited with their treasures. But it all started here, in this small apartment. With this small family that had chosen each other despite everything, love multiplied, just as Emma's mother had promised, just as Margaret would have understood, just as it always did when given. The chance to grow. January brought complications Richard should have anticipated. The Times article had opened floodgates he wasn't prepared for, not of generosity, but of greed disguised as need. "We've got a problem," Carmen announced, arriving at the community center with a thick folder. "People are starting to game the system, selling family items they don't really need to sell, hoping to get them back free through the project." Emma sat at the table, her notebook open, face creased with concentration. "Show me." Carmen spread out documentation. 3 families had sold items in the past week, all with stories of medical crisis or job loss. But his investigation showed stable incomes, no real emergencies. They read about Miguel getting his father's watch back. Carmen explained. "Now everyone wants their miracle. That's not how it works," Emma said, frustration clear in her voice. "The magic only works if the need is real, if the sacrifice means something." Linda placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "People are complicated, baby. When they see others getting help, sometimes they convince themselves they deserve it too. But they're stealing from kids who really need it." Emma's eyes filled with tears. Kids whose mamas are actually sick, whose families are actually hungry. How could they? Richard had been dreading this moment, when Emma's pure vision would meet human nature's darker impulses. But he'd underestimated her. Again. Emma wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and opened her notebook to a fresh page. Okay, new rules. Carmen, you need to verify real need medical records, pay stubs, whatever it takes. But quietly, dignity still matters. That's a lot of work, Carmen pointed out. Then we'll help, Emma said firmly. This is too important to let fake people ruin it for real families. Over the following days, Emma threw herself into refining the project's protocols with an intensity that worried Linda. She's not sleeping well, Linda confided to Richard one evening. I hear her up at night, working on her notebook. She keeps saying she has to protect the magic. Richard found Emma at the community center after school, surrounded by spreadsheets Daniel had helped her create. For a 7-year-old, her grasp of systems was remarkable. Emma, he said gently, you can't carry this all yourself. I have to, she replied without looking up. It was my idea. If it goes wrong, if people use it badly, that's my fault. No, Richard sat beside her, closing the laptop. That's their fault. You can't control what people do with gifts you give them. But what if the whole thing falls apart? What if the kids who really need help can't get it because greedy people take everything? Richard pulled her into his lap. Then we adapt. We learn. We make it better. But Emma, you're 7 years old. This shouldn't all be on your shoulders. I'll be 8 next month, Emma said quietly. That's old enough to be responsible. Mama was only 29 when she died. That's not very old either, but she still tried to fix everything before she left. Made lists, recorded videos, set up everything she could. Because that's what you do when you love people. You try to protect them, even when you can't. The insight gutted him. Emma wasn't just building a program, she was trying to finish what her mother started. Try and create enough good in the world to somehow balance the loss. Your mama would be proud of what you've built, Richard said, but she'd also want you to be a kid sometimes, to play, to laugh, to not carry the whole world. The world's heavy, Emma said simply. Someone has to carry it. Not alone. Never alone. That weekend, Richard called an emergency meeting of what Emma had dubbed the bracelet board himself. Linda, Carmen, Maria, Daniel via video from Boston, and Emma. But he added someone new, Dr. Martinez from the hospital. Why is she here? Emma asked, suspicious of changes to her carefully crafted team. Because, Dr. Martinez said gently, your grandfather is worried about you, and frankly, so am I. You've lost weight since your illness. Your aunt says you're not sleeping. You're taking on adult-sized responsibilities because adults keep messing things up. Emma burst out. If grown-ups did their jobs right, kids wouldn't have to sell their mama's bracelets. The room went silent. Emma's chest heaved with the force of her emotion, tears streaming down her face. You're right, Linda said quietly. You're absolutely right. We failed you. The world failed your mama when she got sick. Failed me when I couldn't afford to help her. Failed you when you had to be brave too young. So I have to fix it. Emma whispered. I have to make it better for other kids. No, Richard said firmly. We have to fix it. Together. That's what family does. We share the load. Dr. Martinez leaned forward. Emma, what you built is extraordinary, but you know what would make it even better? If you showed other kids that it's okay to accept help, too. That being strong doesn't mean doing everything alone. Emma considered this. You mean like demonstrating? Like how I had to take medicine even though it tasted bad, to show other kids it was okay? Exactly like that. Emma chewed her lip, thinking. Then she opened her notebook and wrote in large letters, Bracelet Board Rule Number 1. Nobody fixes everything alone. There, she announced. It's official, but I'm still Chief Magic Officer. Wouldn't have it any other way, Richard assured her. The meeting shifted then. From crisis to collaboration, Maria suggested partnering with social workers to verify need. Carmen proposed a mentorship program where families who'd been helped could help others. Linda recommended mental health support for all participating families. Daniel offered to create a secure database to track everything properly. And Emma drew pictures. What are you working on? Richard asked. She showed him a tree with silver branches, each branch holding a heart. Some hearts were broken. Some were whole. Some were in the process of being mended. It's the bracelet family tree, she explained. See, every family we help becomes part of our family, and families take care of each other. So it's not just us helping them, they help each other too. That's beautiful, Maria said. Can we use this as our logo? Emma beamed. Really? My drawing? It's perfect, Linda agreed. It shows what we're really about, not just returning objects, but building connections. As the meeting concluded, Richard noticed Emma yawning repeatedly. Someone needs a nap. Chief Magic Officers don't nap, Emma protested. Even as she rubbed her eyes. They do when their grandfather says so, Richard countered, scooping her up. She was asleep before they reached the car. That night, Linda called him. She ate a full dinner, first time in a week, and she's sleeping soundly. She needed to let go of some control, to trust others with her vision. She gets that from Amy. Linda said softly, the need to fix everything, to protect everyone. Amy spent her last months trying to prepare for every possible future problem. But you can't, can you? Prepare for everything, no. But you can build something strong enough to adapt. That's what Emma's done, built something bigger than any one person. Richard, thank you for seeing what she needed, for being the grandfather she deserves. She saved me first. Richard reminded her. Everything else is just returning the favor. The next morning brought a surprise. Sarah Williams, the reporter, arrived at the community center with someone unexpected, a thin woman in an expensive suit, who looked deeply uncomfortable. This is Patricia Henley, Sarah introduced. She has something to say. Patricia clutched her purse like a shield. I'm one of the people who tried to game your system. I sold my mother's pearls last week, told Carmen it was for medical bills, but it wasn't. I wanted to see if the miracle was real. Emma studied her with those two wise eyes. Why? Because I stopped believing in miracles when my mother died. She was everything good in my life, and when she left, I thought goodness left too. Patricia's voice cracked. I read about your project, about what you're doing, and I wanted to believe again, but I didn't know how to ask for help with grief. Selling something seemed easier than admitting I just missed my mom. Emma stood, walked over to Patricia, and took her hand. Missing your mom isn't something you need to be fixed. It's something you need to be held through. I brought the money back, Patricia said, offering an envelope, and I want to volunteer, if you'll have me, to help verify real need. I'm an accountant. I can spot false numbers easily. Emma looked at her board. They nodded. Welcome to the bracelet family, Emma said simply. Rule number 1, nobody fixes everything alone. As Patricia broke down crying, embraced by Maria and Linda, Richard caught Sarah Williams' eye. Still think it's just a story? He asked. No, Sarah said, watching Emma comfort a woman 5 times her age. It's a revolution, a quiet one, built on chocolate cake and silver hearts, but a revolution nonetheless. Emma looked up at him then, her mother's bracelet and Margaret's locket catching the light. Mr. Richard, I think the magic is safe now. It's too big for any one person to break. Yes, he agreed, thinking of all the threads connecting this growing web of care. I think you're right. But Emma was already moving on, pulling out her notebook to add Patricia's skills to their resource list. Because that's what Chief Magic Officers did. They paid attention, they multiplied love, and they never stopped believing that the next miracle was just one kind act away. The Bracelet Project would face more challenges, more people would try to game the system. Some would succeed, but the core of what Emma had built, a community that saw need and responded with dignity. That turned loss into connection that would endure, because it was built on something stronger than rules or systems. It was built on a 7-year-old's unshakable faith that love, properly organized, could heal almost anything. And maybe, Richard thought as he watched her work, maybe it could. February arrived with a crisis no one had anticipated. Richard got the call at dawn. Linda, voice shaking with barely controlled panic. Richard, it's Emma's father, Marcus. He's here. He wants to see her. Richard's blood ran cold. In all their planning, all their protection, they never prepared for this. Marcus Webb, who'd abandoned Emma as an infant, who'd never sent a penny of support, who disappeared completely when Amy got sick. I'm on my way. Don't let him near her. She's at school. But Richard, he has rights, legal rights. He's her biological father. The words hit like physical blows. Richard dressed with trembling hands, mind racing through options. His lawyers, the guardianship papers still in process. The life they built, how solid was any of it against biology? He found Linda at the community center, facing off with a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Marcus Webb was handsome in that careless way that suggested life had always been easy. Designer clothes, perfect teeth, and eyes that kept sliding away from direct contact. You must be the rich grandfather, Marcus said. extending a hand Richard didn't take. Emma's quite the little celebrity now. That Times article about her charity work? Saw it in L.A. Touching stuff. What do you want? Richard's voice could have frozen fire. To see my daughter. Natural enough, right? Been gone a while, sure, but people change. Grow up. Want to make amends. Linda stepped forward. You haven't seen her since she was 6 months old. Haven't sent a penny of support. Amy died without a word from you, and now you want to play daddy. Marcus shrugged. Like I said, people change, especially when they realize what they've missed. His eyes gleamed. Kid's got quite the setup now. Rich grandfather, charity foundation, media attention. Lucky girl. The implication hung in the air like poison. Richard felt rage building, but forced calm. If you're suggesting, I'm not suggesting anything, Marcus interrupted smoothly. Just saying I'd hate to have to go through courts to see my own daughter. Media loves a custody battle. Billionaire tries to keep father from child. Ugly headlines. You're threatening us, Linda said flatly. I'm exploring options. See, I've had some financial setbacks. Acting work dried up. Could use some stability. Figured Emma needs her real dad around, and I need. Well, families help each other, right? Richard pulled out his phone. Harrison, I need the legal team at the community center immediately. He looked at Marcus. You want to play? Let's play. Within an hour. The center's small conference room was packed with lawyers. Marcus's confident facade cracked slightly at the show of force. Abandonment. Lead counsel Thomas enumerated. Failure to provide support. No contact for 7 years. Any court would terminate your parental rights. Maybe, Marcus conceded. But it would take time, months, maybe years. All while little Emma wonders why her daddy's being kept away. Trauma like that. He shook his head mockingly. What do you want? Richard asked bluntly. 100,000. Cash. I disappear. Sign whatever papers you want. Emma never has to know I was here. Absolutely not. Linda spat. We don't negotiate. With deal, Richard said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Richard, no. Linda protested. He's extorting us. Emma would be horrified. Emma will never know, Richard said firmly. He looked at Marcus. 200,000. But you sign away all parental rights. No take-backs. No future contact. You vanish completely. Marcus's eyes lit up. 300. Done. Thomas, draw it up. The room exploded in protests, but Richard raised a hand. Everyone out except Marcus and Thomas. When they were alone, Richard leaned forward. Let me be clear. You'll get your money, but if you ever come near Emma again, if you even think about contacting her, I will destroy you. Not financially, existentially. I will erase you so thoroughly that you'll wish you'd never been born. Understood? Marcus tried for bravado. Threatening me, old man. Promising you. I've lost too much to lose her too. Take the money and run. Or stay and discover what $3 billion worth of revenge looked like. 2 hours later. It was done. Papers signed. Money transferred. Marcus Webb officially and permanently out of Emma's life. Richard found Linda crying in the art room. How could you pay him? How could you let him win? He didn't win, Richard said gently. He sold his daughter for $300,000. He'll have to live with that. We protected Emma from ever knowing her father saw her as a commodity, but the money is nothing. Pennies compared to her peace. Some problems money can't solve elegantly. Sometimes you just need them gone. Linda wiped her eyes. What if he comes back? He won't. The papers are airtight. He's a coward. Bullies always are. Should we tell Emma? Never. Let her keep the father she's constructed in her mind, someone who left before he could love her. Not someone who came back just to sell her. That afternoon, Richard picked Emma up from school as usual. She chattered about her day, the bracelet project, plans for expanding to Brooklyn. Normal, innocent, unaware of the danger that had passed like a shadow. Mr. Richard, she said suddenly, you look sad. Just thinking. About Margaret, about family. How precious it is. How lucky I am to have you and Linda and Daniel. Emma slipped her hand into his. We're lucky too. Linda says you're like the dad she never had and the grandpa I always needed. What about you? What do you say? Emma considered seriously. I say you're my person. Like Mama was Linda's person and Linda is my person. Everyone needs persons. Yes. Richard agreed. Throw tight. Everyone does. They were halfway to the center when Emma spoke again. I know about my father. Richard's heart stopped. What? Not like, no. But I know he left when I was a baby. I know he never came back. Linda thinks I don't remember. But I do. Little pieces. What do you remember? Cologne. Expensive. Kind. And laughing. But not nice laughing. The kind that makes you feel small. She looked up at him. I used to wonder why he didn't want me. If I wasn't good enough or smart enough or something. Emma. No. It's okay. She interrupted. I figured it out. It wasn't about me at all. Some people just have empty places where love should be, like puzzles missing pieces. Not their fault, but not fixable either. You're very wise, Mama taught me. She said my father gave her the only thing he could me, and that was enough, more than enough. They walked in silence for a moment before Emma spoke again. If he ever came back, I wouldn't want to see him. Is that bad? No, Richard said firmly. That's protecting yourself. That's smart. Good, because I have all the family I need. You, and Linda, Daniel, Mrs. Rodriguez, Carmen, Maria, the Hearts Together kids. Real family, chosen family. That evening, Richard watched Emma at the community center, leading a bracelet project meeting with her usual enthusiasm. She had no idea how close she'd come to having her world disrupted. The secret sat heavy in his chest, but it was a weight he'd gladly carry forever. Linda appeared beside him. Thank you, she whispered, for protecting her, for being willing to be the bad guy so she could stay innocent. She won't be innocent forever, Richard said, but she deserves to lose it on her own timeline, not because her sperm donor got greedy. Sperm donor, Linda repeated with a slight smile. Amy used to call him that too. They watched Emma demonstrate her new tracking system for return items, using colored strings to connect families on her hand-drawn tree. Several volunteers were taking notes, treating her ideas with the respect they deserved. She's going to change the world, Linda said softly. She already has, Richard replied. Mine, at least. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Richard stood in his penthouse, looking at the city lights. His phone rang. Thomas, his lawyer. The wire transfer went through. Webb took the money and ran, already on a flight to Mexico. From what our investigator says. Good. Keep tabs on him. If he ever sets foot in New York again, we'll know immediately. Richard, are you sure about this? Paying him off feels like protecting my granddaughter from learning. Her father would sell her for cash, yes, I'm sure. After hanging up, Richard poured himself a scotch, his first in months. The Marcus situation had shaken him more than he'd admitted. How many more threats lurked in the shadows? How many ways could the world hurt Emma before she was old enough to defend herself? His phone buzzed. A text from Emma, who was supposed to be sleeping. Grandpa, I know something happened today, and Linda's been weird, and you look like someone stole your clouds. Whatever it is, we're okay. We're family. Family fixes things together, remember? Richard typed back, just some grown-up complications. Nothing for you to worry about, okay? But remember rule number 1. Nobody fixes everything alone. Love you too, sweetheart. Sleep now. But Richard remained awake long into the night, standing guard against threats both real and imagined. $300,000 to make a problem disappear. It was nothing compared to what he'd paid to keep Emma's world intact. In the morning, he'd go back to being Grandpa Richard, supporter of dreams and multiplier of love. But tonight, he was a dragon guarding his treasure, ready to breathe fire at anyone who threatened his family. Because that's what Emma had taught him. Family wasn't just about blood or law, or even love. It was about the fierce determination to protect each other's light, even when it meant standing in the darkness yourself, especially then. The next day, Richard increased security measures quietly. Background checks on all bracelet project volunteers became more thorough. The community center got new cameras. Emma's school was informed about potential custody issues. Though the legal documents made clear Marcus had no rights, but life continued. Normally, Emma turned 8 with a small party at the community center, insisting on chocolate cake with extra memory molecules. Daniel came from Boston with a custom-built computer for her bracelet project work. The Hearts Together kids made her a crown-labeled chief magic officer, and Marcus Webb remained in Mexico, his social media showing him burning through his blood money in beach resorts. Each photo a reminder of the price he'd put on his daughter. Richard kept tabs through his investigators, but as weeks turned to months, the threat faded. Marcus was what Richard had suspected, a coward and an opportunist. When easy money dried up, he'd move on to the next scheme, the next mark, the next life to disrupt. But Emma would be protected. Richard had made sure of that. The adoption papers were now ironclad, the guardianship absolute. Marcus Webb might be her biological father, but he had no more claim to her than a stranger on the street. And Emma flourished, unaware of the danger that had passed. The Bracelet Project expanded to 5 locations across the city. She started 3rd grade with excitement, her teacher reporting that she was helping other kids with their losses. Her notebook grew into multiple volumes, each one filled with plans to multiply love. The secret of Marcus's visit remained with Richard and Linda, a burden they carried together. Sometimes, late at night, they'd share a knowing look over Emma's head as she worked on her projects. The weight of what they protected her from, the price of innocence maintained. But it was worth it, every penny, every secret, every sleepless night standing guard, because Emma deserved to define her father on her own terms as someone who'd given her life, and nothing more, not as someone who tried to sell her back. Love multiplied, but so did protection. And sometimes, Richard had learned, the greatest act of love was the secret you kept, the darkness you absorbed so a child could remain in light. March brought spring and revelations. The Bracelet Project had expanded to all 5 boroughs, with Emma's simple notebook system evolved into a full database that Daniel maintained from Boston. But success brought scrutiny, and scrutiny brought questions Richard had hoped to avoid. "There's something you need to see," Sarah Williams said, arriving at the community center with a folder. Her expression was grim. "I've been following up on the project stories, and I found something." Richard accepted the folder, Emma peering around his arm to look. Inside were photographed surveillance-quality shots of Marcus Webb in Miami, living lavishly. But that wasn't what made Richard's blood run cold. It was the interview transcript attached. "Failed actor tells all. How I sold my daughter to a billionaire. He went to a tabloid." Sarah explained. "Told them you paid him off to abandon Emma." Twisted the whole story. "They're running it tomorrow unless what?" Linda demanded, having appeared in the doorway. "Unless we give them a better story, the truth." Emma had gone very still, staring at the photos of the father she barely remembered. "Is this my dad?" The adults exchanged glances. Richard knelt beside her. "Yes. And you paid him money to go away." There was no point lying, not to those 2 wise eyes. "Yes." Emma nodded slowly. "How much? Does it matter?" "How much? $300,000. Emma pulled out her phone, opening the calculator app. She divided 300,000 by 8, her age, then by 365 days in a year, then by 24 hours in a day. "So I'm worth about $4.28 an hour to him," she said quietly. "Less than minimum wage." "Emma," Linda started, but Emma held up a hand. "It's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's informative." She looked at Richard. "You protected me from him." "I tried." "No, you did. You turned him into a math problem instead of a rejection. That's—" She paused, searching for words. "That's the most grandpa thing ever." Sarah cleared her throat. "The tabloid story comes out tomorrow. It'll make Richard look like he bought a grandchild. Make your whole family seem—" "Stop," Emma commanded. She stood, all for feet of determined child. "Get me a camera, Emma." "What are you—" "I'm going to tell the truth. All of it. On video. And you're going to send it to every news outlet that will take it." She looked at the adults. "Unless you have a better idea." "They didn't die an hour later." Emma sat in front of Sarah's camera, wearing her mother's bracelet and Margaret's locket. She refused makeup or coaching, insisting on speaking directly to the lens. "Hi," she began. "I'm Emma Chen. You might know me from the Bracelet Project. Today I want to tell you about fathers." She held up the photo of Marcus. "This is my biological father. He left when I was 6 months old. Never sent birthday cards or money or even a sorry. That was okay. Me and Mama and Aunt Linda. We were a good family without him." Her voice stayed steady, but tears tracked down her cheeks. "When Mama died 18 months ago, he didn't come to the funeral. When I was in the hospital, he didn't call. But when I got famous, when there was money and attention, suddenly he remembered he had a daughter." She looked directly into the camera. "He came back to sell me, like I was a thing, not a person. And my grandpa, my real grandpa, who chose me, he bought my freedom. $300,000 to make sure I never had to see the man who looked at me and saw dollar signs." Emma pulled out her notebook. showing pages of calculations. I did the math. If my biological father had worked a minimum wage job for the 8 years he was gone and saved just half, he'd have more than what he sold me for. So it wasn't even about needing money. It was about easy money. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Some people think my grandpa did something wrong by paying him, but I think he did something brave. He protected me from knowing my father wanted money more than he wanted me, until now. Emma held up a new drawing in her family tree, but with additions. See this? Every kid in the Bracelet Project has someone who left. Parents, grandparents, siblings, death, abandonment, circumstances, different reasons, same hurt. But look what we built instead. The drawing showed interconnected hearts, names written in each one. We built a family of choice, of people who stay, of love that multiplies instead of divides. She faced the camera one last time. So yes, my biological father sold me for $300,000. But my real family, the one that chose me, they think I'm priceless. And that's the only math that matters. To all the kids whose parents left by choice or by chance, you're priceless too. And if nobody's told you that today, the Bracelet Project family is telling you now. She stood, straightening her shoulders. My name is Emma Chen. I'm 8 years old. My mama died. My father sold me, and I'm okay. Because I'm loved by people who know my worth can't be counted in dollars. Some people build families with blood. We build ours with choice, and choice is stronger. Because it's renewed every single day. The video ended with Emma walking off camera, straight into Richard and Linda's arms. Did I do okay? She whispered. Perfect. Richard managed through his tears. Absolutely perfect. Sarah uploaded the video immediately, sending it to every contact she had. Within hours, it had gone viral. Hashtag priceless Emma began trending. The tabloid killed their story, suddenly on the wrong side of public opinion. But more importantly, responses poured in from children in similar situations. Kids who'd been abandoned, sold, used. Kids who needed to hear that their worth wasn't determined by those who left. We need a new program, Emma announced that evening, exhausted but determined. For kids whose parents chose to leave. Different from Hearts Together. Because it's a different kind of hurt. What would you call it? Maria asked. Emma thought carefully. The Worth Project. Because everybody needs to know their worth isn't set by people who don't see it. Marcus Webb released a statement the next day, trying to spin the story. But public opinion had already decided. His acting career, what was left of it, evaporated overnight. The money he'd taken became poison. No amount of spending could wash off the stain of selling his daughter. Do you regret the video? Linda asked Emma that night. No, Emma said firmly. Secrets were hurting us. Now the truth is out. And it can't hurt us anymore. You know people will recognize you now. No more anonymous helping. Emma shrugged. Maybe that's okay. Maybe seeing helps people believe. Like, if I could be okay after everything, maybe they can too. Richard tucked her into bed, noting the exhaustion in her eyes. You were very brave. Today, I learned from you, she said sleepily. You were brave first, protecting me. Now I protect other kids by showing them it's survivable. What is? Being left, being sold, being sick, losing people. Her eyes drifted closed. It's all survivable if you have people who see your real worth. Richard sat by her bed long after. She fell asleep, marveling at the strength in such a small frame. She'd taken the worst thing, learning her father had literally sold her, and transformed it into fuel for helping others die. His phone buzzed with messages. Donation offers for the Worth Project. Volunteers wanting to help. Therapists offering free services for abandoned children. Emma's brutal honesty had opened hearts and wallets across the country. But the message that mattered most came from Daniel. Dad, I just saw the video. That's our Emma, isn't it? Turning pain into purpose. Mom would be so proud. We all are. Richard typed back. She's extraordinary, just like her aunt raised her to be. Like her grandfather taught her to be. Daniel corrected. See you this weekend. The Worth Project needs a website, and I know a certain chief magic officer who has opinions about design. As Richard finally headed home, he thought about Worth, how Marcus had calculated Emma's in dollars, how Emma had recalculated it in love, how the world was learning to see value beyond price tags. The Bracelet Project had started with returning objects, but it had become something more, a movement of returning people to their true worth, of creating family from fracture, of multiplying love until it drowned out loss. And at the center of it all, an 8-year-old girl who sold her mother's bracelet for $20 and ended up teaching the world that some things were beyond price. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Worth project would need structure, funding, careful planning. But tonight, Richard simply felt grateful that Emma had chosen him on that October day, grateful that Linda had trusted him, grateful that Margaret's wish for grandchildren had been answered in the most unexpected way. His phone buzzed once more. Emma, who should have been sleeping. Grandpa, thanks for buying my freedom. Best money you ever spent, right? He typed back. Best investment I ever made. Returns have been priceless. Good night, Grandpa. Love you times infinity. Love you times infinity plus one. And in her bedroom across the city, Emma smiled in her sleep, wearing her mother's bracelet and Margaret's locket, surrounded by drawings of family trees that grew in all directions, proving that love like Worth couldn't be contained by conventional calculations. It could only multiply. October 15th arrived with golden light and the scent of possibility. 1 year exactly since Emma Chen had approached a lonely billionaire with chocolate cake and changed everything. Richard stood in Riverside Park at dawn, placing flowers on the bench that had become sacred ground, not a memorial, but a celebration. Margaret's roses for the love that led him here, Amy's daisies for the daughter who'd inherited her grace, and sunflowers for Emma Bright, bold, turning always toward light. You're early, Linda said, approaching with coffee. Couldn't sleep. Too much to do before the ceremony. The ceremony. What had started as Emma's simple idea, we should celebrate our bench anniversary, had grown into something unprecedented. The mayor would be there, hundreds of families touched by the bracelet and Worth projects, media from around the world, all drawn by the story of a little girl who transformed grief into grace. Is Emma ready? Richard asked. Linda smiled. She's been ready since 5 a.m., insisted on making the cake herself, said store-bought wouldn't have memory molecules. They stood together, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of hope. A year, Linda marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like a lifetime. The best year of my life, Richard said simply, even with Marcus, even with the challenges. Every single day has been worth it. Amy would be so proud, Linda said softly, of Emma, of you, of all of this. She always believed in ripples, one small act creating waves of change. By noon, the park was transformed. The area around their bench had been decorated with silver ribbons and hearts, each one bearing the name of a family helped by Emma's projects. A small stage had been erected, where the Hearts Together children would perform. Emma stood at the center of it all, wearing a new dress, but the same old bracelet and locket. She'd grown to inches in the year, lost another baby tooth, but her eyes held the same ancient wisdom that had captured Richard from the start. Grandpa, she ran to him, vibrating with excitement. Did you see? Carmen brought every family we've helped, and Sarah says there are bracelet projects in 32 cities now. 32, I saw. Richard said, straightening her collar. Are you ready for your speech? I'm not giving a speech, Emma announced. I'm telling a story about a bench and a cake and how love multiplies. The crowd gathered, families of all configurations, children clutching returned treasures, volunteers wearing silver heart pins. Daniel had come from Boston with his laptop, ready to live stream for the countless people who couldn't attend. Even Mrs. Rodriguez had closed her bodega for the afternoon, declaring this more important than selling beans. The mayor spoke briefly, proclaiming it Emma Chen Day in New York. The Hearts Together children sang, but everyone was waiting for Emma. She took the stage with the confidence of someone who learned her worth couldn't be shaken. No notes, no podium, just a little girl with a big story. A year ago, she began. I was sad. My mama had died 18 months before. My aunt was tired, and I had $20 to my name. Well, not my name, my mama's name, because I'd sold her bracelet. She held up her wrist, the silver hearts catching the light. I used that money to make a cake for a stranger on a bench. He looked like he'd forgotten that birthdays could be happy, like he'd forgotten that life kept going even when people left. Richard felt Linda's hand slip into his as Emma continued. That stranger became my grandpa, not by blood or law at first, but by choice. By showing up every Tuesday, by seeing me, not my sadness, by teaching me that scars were just proof of survival. Emma looked out at the crowd. Some of you have gotten things back through the bracelet project, objects you had to sell when life got hard. But I want you to know something. The object isn't the magic. The magic is knowing someone saw your sacrifice and said that matters. She pulled out her original notebook, now reinforced with tape and love and rubber bands holding extra pages. This is where it started, not with millions of dollars or fancy systems, with a notebook and a belief that love multiplies when shared. My mama used to say that we all happy families, the one we're born into and the one we find, or maybe the one that finds us. Emma's voice grew stronger. Today, all of you are my found family. Every person who's given or received, volunteered or donated, hurt or healed. We're connected now by silver threads of choice. She looked directly at Richard. My grandpa taught me that wealth isn't about money. It's about what you do with whatever you have. I had $20 and a cake recipe. He had billions and a broken heart. Apart, we were just sad. Together, we became something else. What? Someone called from the crowd. Emma grinned. A family, a big, messy, chosen family that believes every person is worth more than their worst day. Every child is worth more than what someone paid to leave them. Every memory is worth saving. She held up a new drawing. The bracelet family tree had grown to cover an entire poster board. Hundreds of hearts interconnected. This is us, she declared. This is what we built from one bench, one cake, one choice to see strangers as family. Waiting to be discovered, the crowd erupted in applause, but Emma wasn't finished. I want to make you all a promise, she said, voice carrying over the noise. The bracelet project, the Worth project, hearts together, they're not mine anymore. They're ours. And we're going to keep growing them until every kid who's ever had to sell a memory gets it back. Until every child who's been left knows they're priceless. Until every sad person on every bench has someone show up with metaphorical cake. She paused, seeming older than her 8 years. My mama's gone. She's not coming back. That hole in my heart is forever. But around that hole, I've grown so much love that sometimes I can barely hold it all. That's what we do here. We don't fill the holes. We grow gardens around them. Richard was crying openly now, not caring who saw. This child, his granddaughter, by every measure that mattered, had articulated in minutes what philosophers spent lifetimes trying to express. Emma concluded simply, my name is Emma Chen. A year ago, I made a chocolate cake. Today, we made a movement. Tomorrow, we'll make more miracles. Because that's what families do. We multiply love until there's enough for everyone. She walked off stage straight into Richard's arms as the crowd roared approval. Did I do? Okay, Grandpa, perfect. He whispered, absolutely perfect. The rest of the day blurred interviews, photos, families sharing stories. Daniel worked with volunteers to register new cities wanting to start bracelet projects. The mayor announced city funding for the Worth project. Corporate sponsors lined up to support expansion. But the moment Richard treasured most came at sunset. The crowds had thinned. The media had packed up. And Emma insisted on one last tradition, sitting on their bench, sharing chocolate cake she'd made that morning. It tastes exactly like the first one. Richard marveled. Same recipe, Emma confirmed. Mama's recipe. But look, she pointed to the cake. I added something. Written in frosting were 3 words, love multiplies daily. That's our motto now, Emma announced. For all the projects, because it's true. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of ending and beginning. Linda had stepped away to give them this moment, understanding. Some traditions were sacred. Mr. Richard, Emma said suddenly, Grandpa, thank you. For what? For seeing me that day, for eating my cake even though you were sad, for coming back, for staying. She leaned against him, for teaching me that family isn't about who makes you. It's about who makes you better. You made me better, Richard said softly. You brought me back to life. That we saved each other, Emma decided. That's the best kind of saving. As stars began to appear, Richard thought about the mathematics of miracles. 1 small girl plus 1 broken man equaled a movement that had touched thousands. $20 invested in cocoa had returned billions in donations. 3 hearts on a silver bracelet had created a network of connections spanning continents. But the real calculation was simpler. Love, when shared rather than hoarded, multiplied infinitely. Same time next year, Emma asked. Already planning. Every year. Richard promised. Forever. Forever's a long time, Emma pointed out practically. Not long enough, Richard replied, thinking of Margaret, of Amy, of all the love that transcended loss. Not nearly long enough. They packed up as the park lights came on, but Emma paused at the bench for one last moment. She pulled out a marker, and, before Richard could stop her, wrote on the wooden slat, "Emma and Richard's bench, where love multiplies." Emma, that's vandalism, she grinned, unrepentant. It's art and history and a promise. She took his hand. "Come on, Grandpa, and Linda's making dinner, and Daniel's staying all week. And tomorrow we have 3 new families to help." As they walked away, Richard glanced back at the bench where everything had started. The marker would fade, the wood would weather, but what had begun there was permanent. A little girl's courage had rewritten his ending, turning an epilogue of grief into a new chapter of purpose. "Hey, Grandpa," Emma said as they reached the park exit. "I love you times infinity plus 1. I love you times infinity plus 2, plus 3, plus 4. They continued the mathematical impossibility all the way home, their laughter echoing through streets that had witnessed a miracle disguised as a Tuesday. A tragedy transformed into triumph, a seller of bracelets who discovered that some things, the best things, could never be sold, only given and received and multiplied into forever. In the year that followed, the movement Emma started would grow beyond anyone's imagination. The Bracelet Project would expand to over 100 cities. The Worth Project would help thousands of abandoned children reclaim their value. Hearts Together would become a model for grief support worldwide. But for Richard, the measurement that mattered most would always be simpler: one child, one bench, one choice to share cake with a stranger, everything else the millions raised. The families reunited, the hearts healed, was just love doing what love did best. Multiplying. The end.